Thank you for joining me to discuss listening to your conscience. This presentation came out of discussions with students and faculty about what it means to listen to and develop one's conscience. It is just the beginning of the discussion, and I invite students to engage in the discussion section on YouTube or My Nursing Education. Together, we can grow our consciences. For me, my journey to fully develop my conscience began in my career as a young officer when I was called on to make hard decisions. It culminated in my decision to use my faith as a tool to learn to more carefully listen to my conscience. For you, it may be different. It seems like students frequently ask me, what decision should I make? Or tell me when I point out an error in judgment that they didn't know their action was wrong. There are times my instinct is to say, "How could you not know?" Then I remember all of my mistakes. The times I failed to listen to the voice inside that was the voice of uncertainty, or even at times the voice saying, "You know that is wrong." In those moments, I remembered that we all need guidance. We all need a friend. If it were only as simple as the wisdom of Jiminy Cricket to let your conscience be your guide. But even Jiminy realized that a conscience is that small voice that people won't listen to. Part of my job is to teach you the skills necessary to be a good nurse, whether that be as an RN, a nurse practitioner, a researcher, or a policymaker. And that includes helping you in developing a well-formed conscience and sound moral judgment. How can one be a good nurse without both? Sometimes guiding a student can be as easy as asking a question. Did you, if even for a moment, think that you should not do what you did? If the answer is yes, and almost any time we're having this conversation, the answer is going to be yes, then my next comment is that moment of pause, that inner voice was your conscience. Let that inner voice be your guide. It's important to develop the right type of conscience. As a nursing student, you should develop an informed conscience. And to do that, it takes constant use and examination. But through that use and examination, one can identify what is upright and truthful, use reason to formulate judgments, and use wisdom of one's faith tradition or culture. Remember, just like you exercise your body if you want to be a good athlete, you have to exercise your mind if you want to be knowledgeable, and your conscience if you want to make good decisions and have good moral judgment. Consider the following principles. Do good and avoid intrinsically evil acts. We should all feel called to do good and avoid evil. Most of us know those things that are always, always, always bad before we reach adulthood. Is there any of you that doubts lying is wrong or that rape is wrong? You know that killing and stealing are wrong. You would never take the credit card of the person sitting in front of you. But would you take the answers on their test without permission? Would you borrow the words of an author without giving credit? We call it academic integrity, but it is a form of stealing. The majority of Americans believe abortion is morally wrong, but support the right to euthanasia. You as a nurse will someday have to make a decision whether you believe abortion is wrong or you support euthanasia. And if you take a job where abortion is a job expectation, you would need to let them know in advance that you were not willing to participate. The views on capital punishment and assisted suicide are more mixed. While I may believe in an ethic of life, I do not believe it is enough to have life and be denied dignity. Life needs quality, and each of us can and likely does impact the quality of life of others. What are you doing to the quality of life if you bully a person or make fun of them or tease them? What do you think that tech was doing with the Navy to the quality of life of her patients when they made the photographs of babies and posted them on the internet? What does it mean in terms of being a nursing student? It may mean that to respect the dignity of all human beings, including classmates, we need a peaceful society and a peaceful environment in which to study and learn. It means we should treat every patient, coworker, student, and professor with respect. Some people will tell you that respect is earned, but I believe that respect should be freely given. Least the person withholding respect ends up the person without any. Ultimately, I am responsible for forming my own conscience and for assuming responsibilities for acts I perform. However, I also feel a deep responsibility to help you as students in the development of a well-formed conscience. Your conscience is a pledge of hope and mercy. It will keep you true to the pledge you will take when you become a nurse. In nursing, you will hear the need for lifelong learning preached in almost every class you take. I'm here to tell you that the education of your conscience is also a lifelong task. From the time you were a child, your parents help to educate your conscience and help you to develop the ability to know good from bad, right from wrong, and even navigate the gray areas. A prudent education of your conscience teaches virtue. It teaches temperance, prudence, courage, and justice. In Christianity, we add faith, hope, and charity. And in Buddhism, we teach purity of body, speech, and mind. Whatever your faith tradition, you can also use that to help you develop your conscience. It prevents or cures fears, selfishness and pride, resentment arising from guilt, and feelings of complacency born from human weakness and faults. And we need to be honest. We all have weaknesses and faults. What do I mean by educating your conscience? I'm sure that your parents taught you not to kill and not to steal, or even have improper sexual activity. Now, some of this you listen to, and sometimes you're probably tempted. But when you were a child, you didn't do these things because it was a rule that you were taught. You were taught to follow the rules of your parents. And if you did, you certainly knew it was wrong. If you did any of these things, you knew it was wrong. You didn't have to think about it because it was a rule. As a nurse, you have to go beyond the rules and learn to navigate with expertise the gray areas. What do you do when you can provide the medication to relieve a patient's pain, as a nurse did in New Orleans after Katrina? But by doing that, you know that it may also cause them to not be able to breathe well. And if you don't have the proper equipment to aid in their breathing, they could die. What do you do then? What do you do when your choice is between going home to care for your family during a disaster or staying to provide care for your patients, knowing that other nurses may not be able to get in? What do you do as a student when you see your best friend looking at a test? What do you do when someone fails to report a medication error, even though the error caused no significant harm? These are the gray areas. And these are the areas which you will need to give a lot of consideration to before you become a nurse. When I was still a relatively young officer, the supervisor told me in an angry tone, "You will do the right thing no matter what the consequences." I knew the person was angry about the stand I took and the decision I made. While I never questioned or regretted the decision, I knew it meant I would need to find a new job and soon, as my life was going to become very difficult if I didn't. That moment was significant in my career. Learn from your experiences and pay attention to them. When you examine your own life, you will grow in wisdom of right and wrong. Sometimes you'll find that what once seemed right now seems clearly wrong. That is your conscience developing. You will then be able to make a practical judgment about what the best possible good is based on the examination of your conscience. Follow that voice because you know it is your conscience. And if you have filled it with knowledge and exercised it, then it will serve you well in taking positive action. I was well into adulthood in my career before I learned to listen to my conscience. I had to learn first that it wasn't the voice that wanted, but the voice that was formed by reason, weighing the positive and the negative, considering the overall good of the community. For me, my constant community was those I serve. They were constant. They were my community. They were the one thing that I knew I could count on no matter what. For you, as students, your entire class is a constant for you, and it is your community. The reputation of your class and the future good it can do should help you when you are developing conscience. Listen to your conscience. Listen. Listening to that conscience, that voice inside, is like prayer or meditation. First, you must be silent. Then you ask yourself, what is right and good? And then you listen again. The voice you hear is your conscience. If you have ears, hear it.